All our cases involve an injury of some sort. Often, when it's an auto accident or a trip and fall accident or a workplace accident, often you are talking about people who have had to deal with neurologists and orthopedists.
Hello there and welcome back to the mighty My Future Business Show. My name is Rick Nuske. I'm your host. I'm very excited today. I have somebody on the line that I've just been speaking with prior to the call. We've had a great deal of fun trying to work out the technical issues that you can sometimes get with these types of things. And with that being said, on today's show, I have the pleasure of welcoming attorney at law, Mr. Mitchel Ashley. Welcome to the show, Mitchel.
Hello, thank you.
Yes, absolute pleasure to have you here. Now, you and I are going to be talking about personal injury, what it takes to run a successful law firm, and the process behind securing results for your clients. So there's certainly a lot to unpack here, Mitchel, and it is customary for us to start at the start and find out where you're calling in from today.
Sure. My office is located in downtown Manhattan, New York City.
Oh, beautiful. What do you love about the place the most?
You know what? I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I was born in the Bronx. I now live in Brooklyn. I've lived in Manhattan. So I went to school in the state of New York. I'm just a New Yorker at heart. I went to law school in New York. I love it here.
Absolutely. So what's changed from the very first early days of your life there through to today? Has much changed?
Well, in terms of my law practice or just life in general?
Just life in general. We'll get to your law practice in a moment.
Sure. Look, I think New York City has gone through wild periods in the course of my life. As you can see, I'm a white-haired man. So, I was here through the 70s where there wasn't a thing. I was a kid, but there wasn't a thing that didn't have graffiti on it. And, some horrible crime issues. And then, we did calm down quite a bit in the 80s and the 90s, and the city really took off. And things that were never neighborhoods are now livable neighborhoods. Where my office is the Wall Street district. When I was a little boy, there was nothing down here but offices. And now it's as residential as it is commercial. And that's true for, much of the city. And then, of course, September 11th certainly changed a lot of things in this city for a long time.
Yep.
And most recently, COVID. Let's face it, the city of New York got hit very, very hard with that. And that has changed things to this day. We are still seeing fewer New Yorkers on the subways than we used to see. It's about 2/3 of the way back, but not all the way back.
Yep.
And we still have very staggered work schedules. It was pretty easy to tell this city work day, a weekday to a weekend, the subways, the amount of traffic they had. But now they tell you that the busiest days on the subway are Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Monday and Friday are much lighter.
Yep.
Because people have staggered work schedules.
Yeah, so it's certainly changing, that's for sure and certain. Now, prior to all of this, as a kid growing up, what do you remember? What's a fond memory you can share with us?
Well, look, I'm a sports fan, so I have great memories of the Yankees doing very well.
Oh, yes.
I have great memories of ticker tape parades that I saw when I was an adult, too. So those are some of my fondest memories. My office windows look on Broadway, the area that, if you're not from here, is referred to as the Canyon of Heroes and is where the ticker tape parades go.
Oh, wow.
So I've seen many. I've seen the Yankees go up. I've seen the Rangers have one. I've seen the U.S. women's, World Cup soccer team have them. I've seen Sammy Sosa had one for breaking the home run record. I've seen many, and they are a spectacular event if you've never experienced one.
Yeah, I can imagine, the city that never sleeps. I can just imagine how much fanfare that would go with it. I always think about that sort of ticker tape stuff and how much of it goes down the drain and all around the place. There's tons of it. There must be.
Well, it's really a fascinating sight to see. My office is here, and you just see it pouring out of the windows. I mean, when we did for the heroes, for some of the soldiers, some of the parades. The amount of paper you see coming out the windows, and it's not ticker tape anymore,
No.
but it is just all sorts of paper coming out of the windows all over the place. And if it's a windy day, it's swirling around. And then after the parade passes, it is an army of sanitation workers.
Oh, yes.
And you'd be amazed at how clean the streets are, within a few hours after the parade is over. But if you look in some of the trees and in some of the hedges and on some of the windowsills, you see paper for quite some time.
I love it. Now, obviously, in your location, there'd be lots of places to go have a meal with friends. Do you enjoy doing that? And what's your favorite type of meal?
Well, look at me. As I said, I have two chins now. So, yes, I do enjoy going out. And, look, I'm very equal opportunity. There's really not a food I dislike. I am, very partial to, all sorts of ethnic foods, Italian, Chinese, Jewish food, everything, sushi, all that. So I love it all. And, you point out correctly that there are more than enough restaurants all over the place to have any sort of food.
Now, tell me a little bit, when you've got some downtime, do you enjoy having a bit of quiet time for yourself?
I do. I am a ocean lover and a beach lover. I'm fortunate to have a home near the beach, and nothing I like better than sitting on the beach and swimming in the ocean. So I really enjoy that.
Now, since you mentioned earlier about COVID and how it changed some dynamics, has it affected people's ability to go to sports events, and do you still go to them?
I still go to them, and it is not affecting that any longer. It certainly was for some time.
Yeah.
And you are seeing people wear masks even at outdoor arenas. You're certainly seeing people wear masks in Madison Square Garden or the Barclays Center, which are indoor venues. Same as you're seeing people still wear masks on the subway. And I think you're going to see that for years to come. But the venues are still packed for the big events.
Yeah, love it. Now, we talked about earlier, what life was like growing up. Now, I always remember having people in my life that I would look to, Mitchell, for advice and I guess somewhat mentorship. Did you have anybody like that in your life as you were growing up through those early formative years?
I was blessed. My parents were great. My father was an attorney, and so he was a different type of attorney, but he was an attorney.
Yep.
And he helped me a lot in terms of knowing the law and knowing that stuff. My mom, has always been a guiding force. She's a teacher, so by nature, she was always very good at guiding me through things.
Yep.
And so I was really blessed. And, my extended family, my family is fairly close. So we're not a very big group, but I have aunts and uncles and all that. So that was always really very important to me.
I can only imagine what sort of discipline it takes, and I guess the importance of your father to stay disciplined to achieve the success that you have. Tell me a little bit about the importance of discipline in your life, and for anybody else who is thinking about following this path.
Well, look, I think it is impossible to achieve success in anything without a certain level of discipline. I have to tell you, certainly in junior high school and high school, I can't say I was the most disciplined student ever.
You too.
In college, or as you would refer to, university,
Yep.
The first 2 years, I can't say I was the most diligent student. And at one point, my father sat me down and said, what makes you believe that you're going to the University of Rochester Country Club? You're there to work. And something clicked. And the last 4 semesters of college, I was on the dean's list every semester. So something clicked.
Clicked.
Yeah, and then I didn't go right to law school, which I thought was very beneficial. I went into the working world. Had not did things nothing to do with law. I used to do premium and incentive sales for the casinos in Atlantic City, and through that, kind of learned the benefit of higher education, and originally went back to get my law degree and my MBA. And then it was something that happened during law school that made me, forget the MBA and just continue on and go into personal injury law.
Yeah, wow, great feedback. Thank you very much, Mitchell. And I'm wondering, I'm not a very early riser. I guess due to the demands of your world, are you an early riser, and what's your day look like typically?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I don't think law is an early field, really. I think it's really a late field.
Uh-huh.
Not that I don't, get up, I guess, on the earlier side. I'm normally up between 6 and 6:30.
Yep.
But I think anyone who is a litigator, the way I am, you get very used to the court system. And the reality is that the courthouses open at 9 a.m., and most judges don't take the bench till 9:30 or 10. So it becomes late, your day really is later. And then
Yep.
you were very used to working after the court day, which typically ends, between 4 and 5. And really it ends, most times if you're in the middle of a trial, it ends about 4:30. Generally, you must be out of the courtrooms, which are referred to as parts in New York, by 5, certainly. Otherwise, the court officers, the clerks, all have to get overtime pay. And the court system doesn't want that to happen. So they clear out the jurors, they clear you out, and you're out of the building by 5, certainly.
Yeah, it's all economically driven in many respects, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, and so then you're used to having to go back to the office and working until later in the night to get done what you need to get done for the next day. Or just, for someone like me, I'm a solo practitioner.
Yep.
So when I'm on trial with one case, the office doesn't close down. So the other cases still have to keep moving.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
You do need those hours. And so I think lawyers typically are later workers more than people like Wall Street guys are early risers. I don't think the average lawyer is such an early riser, but really more someone who's used to working late.
Now, I'm just interested in you as an individual rather than you as a professional when I ask this question. The very first time that you had a case, what part did confidence play? Given the fact that you knew the law, but there was no experience behind you, what would any new lawyer that has crossed the bar, as they say, how did you feel?
Well, look, my father taught me an expression. If you're not nervous, then you're not worth anything. And so to say my first trial, to say I was nervous would be an understatement. But, one thing, I used to lecture, and one of the things that I talked about, and it was to trial lawyers, younger people who wanted to become trial lawyers.
Yeah.
And I said, there's an old joke that, on the list of people's fears, the first fear is speaking in public, and the second fear is death. So you'd rather be at a funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy, is the joke. But luckily I've never had that problem. Speaking in public has never been a problem to me. And so that part I felt pretty good about.
Yes. And I
but
always wonder, Mitchell, given the ever-changing landscape of law, how difficult and how much energy, your daily energy, goes into staying up with law. And, is it case law that you have to keep on top of? What is it, statutory law? What's the specialty for you, and how do you go about keeping up?
Well, in what I do, personal injury law, there are 2 types of law. There's statutory law, as you point out, the laws that are passed in Albany.
Yep.
And those certainly play a factor. But we also work under the common law.
Right.
The common law is how the courts have interpreted statutory law over the years, and that is precedent in our cases. So you have to be aware of what the courts have held with regard to certain issues, because it's not enough to just know what the statute says, but it's what the courts have also said, because you're constrained by that. So, and you keep up with it. By as a lawyer, there is no shortage of the amount you read.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, is it something that you have to like you might have an accountant? Is it something that you need to stay chartered with? Do you have to stay up with a number of hours per month to maintain your licensing? Is it that sort of situation?
No, no. We have in New York required what they call CLE credits, continuing legal education credits.
Ah, that's it.
So for the years I was admitted, that didn't become a rule until I was already practicing law for quite some time.
Yeah.
And so for my generation, we have to have, I believe it's 25 hours every 2 years. And so I take, I continually take continuing legal education.
Yeah.
There's an organization in New York called the New York State Trial Lawyers Association that I'm a member of, and at one point I was part of that organization or more active in it. But they offer a program called Decisions each year, and Decisions goes over 20 practice areas and kind of gives you the update over the last year of the new things that have come about in that practice area. And so, I take that class every year along with some other CLEs, and that helps keeping you up to date on what's going on in the world.
Yeah, fantastic feedback. I always wonder about, we have, the judge who's a human being, we've got the attorney who's a human being, and I always think about the word interpretation. Is it ever frustrating for an attorney when they receive a decision, be it through a jury or a judge, and it's not to their liking or their favor or what they thought they knew about the case? Has that ever happened? And how does it make
It's happened to me, and it's devastating.
Yeah.
I had a case for a family. I represented a mother and her 5 children.
Yep.
And we went to trial. On the very first day of jury selection, I thought the judge made an incorrect ruling that was going to affect the trial. I asked for mistrials 4 or 5 times during the first week of trial. The trial lasted a month, during which time my mother-in-law actually died, and so we didn't have court for 5 days. So it lasted a calendar month, but it was only 3 weeks of trial.
Yeah.
And in the end, the judge wrongfully dismissed the case. And to continue on for that family, I had to appeal the judge's decision. That appeal took close to 2 years in our system. And after 2 years, the appellate court said I was right, that the judge was wrong, and gave me a new trial.
Oh, wow.
So it's more than just frustrating.
Yeah.
In a business model like mine, I only get paid if I'm successful for my clients.
Yeah.
So in a business model like mine, having to try the case, put experts on the stand you do have to pay for them.
Yep.
Take the time to try the case, then pay for the appeal, and have to wait all that time just to be told you were right in the first place. Go back and try it again.
Yeah, wow, that's I wonder. I bet. I wonder, as a human being yourself, and you seeing some pretty extraordinary cases, I would suspect. How difficult is it for you to not become emotionally involved with, I guess, the people that you're serving? Is that a difficult thing?
I mean, to me, I am emotional to the people I'm serving.
Yep.
I can't tell you I'm not. I absolutely am.
Yep.
And I have, it's who you are. I think you'd be inhuman to not, get involved with your client. I went from working in a firm where I would see a piece of the case to being a solo because I wanted to know the clients from minute one. I wanted everything to do on the case until I ultimately tried the case for them. And, I don't think I could say I'm not emotional about my cases.
Yep.
So, and I am. And
Yeah. I've always had this impression, Mitchell, that you'd have to keep a bit of a distance, and that's why I asked. And obviously, it's completely the opposite to what I was thinking.
I don't look. There may be lawyers out there who are good at that.
Yeah,
that's not my thing. I've laughed with my clients.
Yep.
And I've cried with my clients.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was cried out of sadness. I've been to funerals for some of my clients, and there were times I had tears of joy with a client of mine who we tried his case to verdict. The jury came back with the verdict. At the reading of the verdict, I thought they had made a math error. Honestly, a math error after like another month-long trial. And I asked the judge to ask the jury what they meant, because when you get a verdict, there's different questions are asked and different answers given. And I thought the jury had made a mathematical error. So the judge brought the jury back in. We went over the numbers again, and in fact, I was right that the jury had misinterpreted how to say something that they wanted to say. So sitting there with me and my client, who, his injuries made him wheelchair bound at the time of the trial, the jury award to him went from a little over $1 million to closer to $6 million.
Oh, that's no small mistake.
No, not at all. And it was life altering for him.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm loving this call, Mitchell. I know that we've talked about the ups and downs, and it must give you a great deal of satisfaction when you do see those results and you walk away after a case is done and you go to a cafe or somewhere to have your lunch or whatever. Do you often reflect immediately after and think to yourself, wow, that was just an incredible experience?
Oh, Look, I think that happens. I'm fortunate to say I think that happens a lot. I've had 2 cases that involved people who lived around landfills and developed cancers and leukemias. One case involved 11 people. Mostly they were children when they got sick, and in most cases had acute lymphocytic leukemia. When that case settled, ultimately, it was life altering for them, and I couldn't help but be thrilled for them and proud for the work that was done. I mean, that case went up and back to our highest court in the state for legal reasons. A lot went into it. The case took 23 years to go from start to finish.
Goodness me.
And when it finally resolved, the clients who, not everyone lived to see it, not all the children survived. And in some cases, the parents did. I'm happy to say that even though that case settled, it must be 6-7 years ago now, there's still 3 or 4 of the clients that I'm still regularly in touch with. We were just through a lot together. And then I had a similar case in the neighborhood of Staten Island, New York, where we represented 32 people. And that finally resolved in December. COVID causes you to kind of freeze time a little. But that finally resolved in December of 2021. We finally settled all those cases. And I'm still in touch with many of those people. And again, that case took over 23 years to resolve.
Oh, wow. This has been one of those very revealing perspectives, from your seat looking to my seat. I really do appreciate it. Now, you've touched on some things there. You've talked about diseases of occupation, and I think to myself, you must have some pretty interesting relationships with specialists in the health field and things like that. How important are relationships in those respects for you and your performance?
Well, in our cases, all our cases involve an injury of some sort.
Yeah.
Often we are, when it's an auto accident or a trip and fall accident,
Yeah.
or a workplace accident, often you are talking about people who have had to deal with neurologists and orthopedists. And generally, I have had their treating doctors have testified on my client's behalf. Sometimes that hasn't happened because the treater is just too busy to testify, and we have to have the client's records reviewed by another orthopedist or another neurologist. And so over the years, there are some I know better than others, but by and large, I try and have the treating doctors come in and testify for their patients. And I also handle medical malpractice cases, and malpractice is not the same as an auto accident. The example I give always is, if you call me up and say I was in a car at a red light and someone hit me in the rear and my knee went into the dashboard and I have a torn meniscus now, I can tell you on the phone that you have a case. And what's going to constrain that case is the amount of insurance coverage available from the car that hit you, and whether you have what they call, SUM or UM coverage, supplemental underinsured motorist or uninsured motorist coverage. But that's what's going to constrain how much you might be able to recover compared to your injury. Malpractice is not the same in that to get to malpractice is not just a bad result at a hospital or in a doctor's office. That can happen. And it's not always someone's fault. Things happen sometimes. But malpractice is a doctor has to depart from good and acceptable medical practice. And the only way you get there is another doctor has to review the records, and we have to find those places where the doctor departed from good, care, whether it be neurological care, orthopedic care.
The standards.
And it's the standards as they exist in this area at that time. So, it's not the but, look, we are in New York City, so the standards are pretty cutting edge generally. But, so the only way you get there is another doctor has to do it. And in New York, the law allows you to have a doctor from a different specialty, talk about it. But I believe better practice is to have a doctor in the same specialty. So if you're saying an orthopedist is at fault, you have an orthopedist review the records. Malpractice lawyers, we have a saying, doctors don't generally like to testify against other doctors. That is called the white coats of silence.
Look, they're somewhat of a community of their own, I'm sure and certain of that. But I'd love to talk a little bit about, if we could, Mitchel, the importance to you of confidentiality and trust. Do they play a big part in your world?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think my clients know that I don't share what they tell me with anyone. And certainly I tell my clients at the start of every case, you're putting your medical condition at issue. You're saying you were harmed in some way.
Yeah.
If there is something in your background that you think the defendants are never going to find out about, they are going to find out about it. And the only way I can protect you is if you tell me about it now. In some circumstances, the defendants are allowed to know about it, and I'm going to tell them about it. In other circumstances, there are some things they're not entitled to know about. And I'm going to try and protect you and go to court to try to protect you as best I can. Yeah. But in terms of my relationships with my clients, certainly anything my clients tell me, I'm not telling anybody.
In one ear and stays in that same ear.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, you have to.
Yeah. Yeah, great feedback. Again, thank you very much, Mitchell. I wonder, given that we're nearing the pointy end of the conversation, we've only just touched the surface of some of the cases that you might have gone through, and I could dig deep for hours with you. I'm really loving the call. But tell me, when somebody has an injury, they're harmed in some way, what is the process when they reach out to you, and how do they go about doing that?
Well, I think every case starts the same way. I get a phone call. In the modern world, often I get an email first, but it's the same. And, that's kind of the first hurdle. I get plenty of calls, and in plenty of circumstances, I tell someone I don't believe that to be a case. But if I do think it's a case, then the next step is we meet. During COVID, those meetings almost all occurred via Zoom. But we have resumed in-person meetings, whether they be here in my office, in the client's home if it has to be, or this Saturday I'm going to meet a client who's in a rehabilitation facility because of a slip and fall, a broken leg with plates and screws. They're in rehab, and they want to get things going, and I told them I'll come meet them there. So, that is the second hurdle, is the meeting.
Yeah.
And I say that's a hurdle because at that time, I explain the details of a lawsuit. I explain how things are going to proceed. And I also make sure I know the facts as best I can. Yeah. And I then say to the client, I'm willing to represent you. Do you want to retain me? Now,
simple.
In my career, I can honestly tell you 99% of the time, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
I can think of one instance where the client took the retainer home because they want to think about it. And in the end, they didn't retain me. It's happened to me once in my career.
One time. Yeah, great feedback. Thank you very much. Now, I wonder, when somebody is going through this, they're obviously short on information. They're not a specialist in this field. They're the person that's suffering from whatever it is that's happened. Do you have a resource available for people that they can maybe go after this interview today to go and check out and find more information about what you do and things like that?
Well, certainly they can look on my website. But more importantly than that, look, I don't know how advertising is in England, but that is where you are. Is that right?
No, sir. Close. Australia.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to insult you. Fine. I know that could be a touchy subject.
That's not an insult at all. Not at all.
Oh, okay. But in Australia, okay. I don't know how advertising is in Australia, but in New York, attorney advertising is off the charts. Paid per click advertising on Google, the lawyer ads are the most expensive ones. On the average TV show, you see lawyer ads, especially on the local stations, constantly. And what I tell people, I have an Instagram show on Mondays at 6:00. And I remind people that unlike all those TV firms that you see all the time, if you pick up the phone and dial my office, the Esri Law Firm, you can ask for me, the boss, and you're going to get me. And I tell people, pick up the phone, call me, pick my brain. It's free.
Here for you.
And it's what I do. And I don't view calls where it turns out not to be a case. I don't view that as a waste of time, because to me, I've made the connection. Yeah. And if that person needs a lawyer down the road, hopefully they're going to pick up the phone and call me again.
Yes.
And I say that, the other thing I say, having been in this field for a while, is it may turn out that you don't need a personal injury lawyer. you know what? I know a lot of lawyers nowadays. I've referred
I bet.
people when necessary for criminal lawyers. I've referred people to family and matrimonial lawyers. I've referred people to real estate attorneys. I do have a network of friends who don't all do what I do. So I've been able to help people. And at the end of the day, in my career, I try and help people. And if I can help people who end up not being my clients, but put them in touch with the right person, that's fine too.
All right. Well, look. With all that being said, we've only again touched the surface of what you've done and the experiences that you've had. Where is the best place for them to connect with you? Is it on social? Is it on LinkedIn? Do you have a website? Could you share that with us?
Sure. Well, the website is theashleylawfirm.com. On my phone number, I can give it to you if you want. It's 212 212-513-1300. And if they want to just shoot me an email, it's really a difficult code to break. It's Mitchel with one L at theashleylawfirm.com. So it's pretty easy.
There you go.
And if they look on, I'm on Instagram, it's the Ashley Law Firm. If they search for me, they'll find me. I'm on Facebook if they search for me. I'm on Threads, the Meta platform.
Yes, sir.
Look, I'm not really an Elon Musk fan at the moment. I'm not really happy with what's become of Twitter. So I'm not, even though I have a presence on Twitter, I'm not there very much.
No, well, look, you're the man about town. You're the man to come and see if somebody's suffering. That's for sure and certain. And for everybody who's on the call today, I'll be making sure that the links back to the AshleyLawFirm.com are available to you. No matter where you see the call, you are going to have access back to Mitchel and all the wonderful work and solutions that he has waiting for you. So be sure to go visit the AshleyLawFirm.com. And with all that being said, Mitchel, thank you so very much for spending some time with me on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me.